Hi, my name's Rachel, and I'm a junior at Elon University. And this is a big topic, but I'll just touch on it briefly. There are a couple of results within the survey that really piqued my interest. One is the way the millennials view women in the workplace and whether or not there are equal opportunities for women. And there was, I don't have the exact numbers in my head, but there seemed to be some discrepancy on whether women and men of the millennial generation thought that there were equal opportunities and whether or not women had the ability to rise up in the workplace. And there was also a similar difference when millennials were asked if the government paid too much attention to problems in minority communities. And again, I don't have the numbers memorized, and I don't think they were hugely different, but I think that made me think anyways that maybe all of these different subsects of our generation, maybe we're not really listening to each other. If the problems aren't our own, how effectively are we hearing the concerns for our neighbors, people of our own generation whose experiences we don't personally have, and how can we really move forward unless we find some way to bridge those gaps? So it's definitely on my mind.
Thank you. Yeah, Xenia, here, you can use mine.
My name is Xenia Framers. I'm a freshman from Harvard, and like Rachel, I actually thought that the racial lines that the entire survey seemed to be divided by were very, very interesting. And I think one was particularly that the difference in government caring for minorities and big government. I think the other one, of course, was reverse discrimination. And I mean, I'm sort of just espousing my own opinion here, but that's okay. That's what I'm supposed to do as a fellow, right? I don't think that the move that we've seen in America towards the idea of colorblindness, where race doesn't matter, where we're all equal, and you don't need things like affirmative action anymore. I don't think that this country is ready for that yet. I still think that race is extremely prevalent and extremely relevant to everyone's lives. And that's what made me somewhat disconcerted by the reverse discrimination idea and by the fact that people weren't as concerned about treating minorities well, because I think that they still need that. I don't think we're at this level of racial equality that I think a lot of people say we are. People are sure to disagree.
On this point or something else?
This point.
Excellent. Let's follow this point a little bit.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Jelani Harvey. I'm a graduating senior at Columbia. And I also had something something that I thought was really interesting on the race part was not only the divide between different political parties, but also there was a question on perceptions of Hispanics and African Americans, which said that it was overall sort of positive. But one thing that I've seen in lots of different psychology studies is that if you're asking someone a question or if they have to answer something based on if there's a socially acceptable answer, then people are more likely to answer it based on what they think the researcher wants to hear. So what's your opinion for African Americans or Hispanics? There's a socially acceptable answer of positive. So I thought that was really interesting, but you looked at the racial divide between Republicans, Democrats, and the wealth gap, what should we do about it? But I think something that's interesting and maybe a follow-up study could show is that we as a nation live in a very racialized world. So I think you mentioned that really well. And that although we say that there's lots of opportunities for everyone, we do live in very segregated communities. And so I think that more needs to be brought into discussion about whether or not the fact that we live in very segregated communities and go to very segregated schools, whether they're specialized high schools or charter schools, whether this is shaping the perception of people towards race and who deserves what. So I thought that was really interesting from the study.
Spencer again. Just from a historical perspective, programs like affirmative action find their basis in historical realities, that black people were disadvantaged in the past, and that's why they're necessary. And what we have here, I think, is a problem of our generation has grown up after the fact, after the crack epidemic that ravaged the inner cities, after the race riots of the late 60s, after the Civil Rights Act. And I think there's a lack of realization on the part of our generation of the realities that have transpired before our existence. So I think this is affecting the way our generation sees the rest of the world. So being so distanced from the reasons why affirmative action is a necessary part of our society, it's much more difficult for our generation to understand why it's necessary. And that means that they will try to understand affirmative action more as reverse discrimination than a policy, than correction of a historical wrong. And what that amounts to is a burden on behalf of educators to inform the youth of just the strength of the legacies of institutionalized discrimination against black people and other people. And I think that's something that is certainly missing from history curricula, especially in light of the fact that history curricula are generally decided by states as opposed to any federal mandate. So I think that there's a very real cause for why we understand, or why the survey reflects this understanding, and I would hope that it could be addressed.